brand new trial. In that brand new trial, the appellate court said not guilty. But in Italy, unlike in this country, when you're found not guilty, it's not over. The prosecution can appeal, and they did to the Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court said was not guilty. And they sent the case back down to the appellate court, and that's what happened yesterday, the verdict of guilty. So where does that leave Amanda Knox right now? She's in phase 2 of all this. She now can appeal this and will appeal this to the Supreme Court, and that will be the final verdict in her case in Italy. So it's a little confusing, much different than what we do here in the United States. But Amanda Knox has one more bite of the apple in Italy in front of that Supreme Court.
Aphrodite Jones, what is your take on the whole Amanda Knox saga?
Okay, I'm going to tell you, Jordan, but I don't think you're going to like what I have to say.
I'll be okay with it.
Well, maybe people out there will not be.
Okay.
Personally, and this is my personal opinion, I believe she's guilty.
Okay.
And I will say this as well, that I have always felt that from the jump. We have two different things happening. We have an Italian media going after her, okay, which is obviously pro-prosecution, and therefore that media campaign poisons the well, and people think, oh, it's the Italians are against her, and da-da-da-da. But we also have Amanda Knox with a PR machine going for her in the United States.
Right.
Okay? So in that sense, anything that the Italian media have done to poison the well has been undone by the American media, which has made her this darling, which I don't agree with. And I think if she wasn't as pretty as she is and from such a, quote, well-to-do family as she was, none of this would be happening in her favor. I do not appreciate the fact that she wrote a book and is running around being Miss Pretty and Miss Innocent when I don't believe it at all. And I'll tell you why. Would you like to hear why?
Well, you're the crime investigator. You know your facts, and I'm going to trust it.
Okay. I'm going to tell you a couple things, first of all. Did the police coerce her into creating a scenario? Maybe. Did they hit her during the interview, as she claims? Maybe. Did they brainwash her? Maybe. But I don't think so. Here's the deal. There is evidence. People talk about no evidence. One of the attorneys in Seattle that's standing up for her is somebody that I worked on the Michael Jackson trial with, hand in hand. We were side by side. I'm not going to mention her name, but she's standing up for Amanda Knox and criticizing the police in Italy and criticizing the DA in Italy. Well, guess what? Defense attorney criticizing faulty police work is defense 101. That's the first thing that any defense lawyer does. Is they go in and they say, "Oh, the police went in and they picked up a hair and their hair was near that hair, so it's contaminated." Well, you know what? Not necessarily. It's human. We're human, and not everything's perfect. And this particular lawyer is saying, "Oh, the bloody footprints in the cottage. They should have picked up the entire tile off the floor instead of putting luminol there." You know what? Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the evidence that's against Amanda Knox, and I'm going to tell you what it is.
Let's hear it.
There is a third person in this saga. Rudy Guede, I can't pronounce the last name. That's the vagrant guy, all right? The drug dealer guy who was convicted over there.
Absolutely.
During his trial, certain things were established. One, that the crime was committed by more than one person. Now, we don't have proof of it, but that was established. Two, that there was a range of motives. There was the idea that there was money as a motive because this woman, the victim, Meredith, took out money from her ATM that day, and that money is gone. There's the motive of a sex game gone bad. And the fact that this woman, the victim's bra, the inside of her bra, the hook of her bra, had the boyfriend, Raffaello's DNA on that bra hook. What does that tell you? Now,
that's pretty interesting.
Here's the other thing, which to me was always the biggest thing of all. The footprints made by Amanda Knox containing her and Meredith's DNA were made in blood. Now, your roommate is killed by a vagrant, okay, by a drifter, okay, and you're going to go into that room and step in that blood? Really?
That is shaky.
Now I've been having people argue with me and say, well, you never know what you would do. If your roommate was killed, you might want to go in and try to help her. No, what I would do immediately, I found my father dead in the house when I was 21 years old. Okay, I walked down in the basement, and there he was. I saw him dead. I froze in my tracks. I went right back up the stairs and called 911. I did not try to save him. I did not try to resuscitate him. I did not try to do anything. I was scared to death.
Right.
And not because I did anything wrong, but because I didn't want to be considered that I did anything wrong. And I was a kid. This was long before I got in the crime world. Oh, my goodness. And I remember that like it was yesterday. I'll always remember it. Number two, what to me is a huge guilt flag is that Amanda Knox, when she was asked by police, was she there that night, said she wasn't. Then she changed her story later when the boyfriend wouldn't confirm that he was with her, and she said she was there that night. So she places herself at the crime scene, but she lies about it. And what does she do? She accuses her boss, this guy Patrick Lumumba. She accuses the guy that runs the bar of killing her roommate, the British girl. That guy is later exonerated. He's put in prison for a while, in jail for a while, and then he has an airtight alibi. How did police coerce that? How does she have a drug haze that she suddenly remembers that she thinks it was somebody else that wasn't even at the scene?
Yeah, that's some good piece of evidence you're saying.
I mean, so in other words, she fabricated a story that her boss killed this roommate. Now, the other thing is, too, Raphael, her boyfriend, who was on again, off again, he fabricated a story that his DNA was on the knife, and so or the knife came from his apartment, and that the victim Michelle's DNA was also on this knife, which they never proved was a murder weapon, but still the girl her throat was slit. Okay.
Right.
He fabricated a story that they cooked together. He and Michelle cooked together, and he accidentally pricked her hand. What? There's also the body was moved. There was a staged burglary. Okay? Knox's DNA was found mixed in with the victim's blood not only in the cottage but also in the victim's bathroom. So you put all this together, the luminol that was used, which police used the chemical to see invisible blood to the human eye, that luminol showed that there were footprints compatible with Amanda and Raffaello's footprints made in the victim's blood. The crime scene was altered. The body was repositioned. Why on earth would a vagrant drug dealer who was there to probably sell drugs to these two kids, Amanda and her boyfriend, who are over there in Italy, students doing what all those students do in that town, university towns all over the world, which is drugs and alcohol and partying, he's going to wind up killing this person he doesn't even know? But yet these two who are somehow involved with her, that the Raphael's got his DNA on her bra straps.
Wow.
Okay? that he's an on-again, off-again boyfriend? That they had nothing to do with this?
But what would be her motive? I'm trying to figure that part out.
Well, here's the thing. You know, Amanda wrote a panicked email to her home after, and she says that she and Raphael shout out for Meredith, and they climb the balcony to see into her window, and Raphael attempts to force the door open, and they call the cops. But when the cops come, neither Amanda nor Raphael mention to the cops that the door, apparently that the door was splintered open when Raphael tried to get into it, nor do they mention that they're concerned about Meredith. So again, there's a bogus story there. These are two people who both knowingly lie about their whereabouts on the night of the murder. And it's not that they claim they don't remember. No, they lie about it.
Right. Plain out.
And she accuses an innocent man of the murder.
And
here's this woman, Kircher, the victim, was left partially clothed, strangled, with her throat cut, November 2nd, 2007. And one man is sitting in prison for it who didn't even know her, while two other people, one of whose knife was brought to the scene, taken from Raphael's apartment, the other of whom is a roommate, who lied again and again, who was stepping and stomping around in this blood of her roommate. You're telling me that you can't put this whole thing together, that this Raffaello had his hands on the victim's bra clasp? What does that say to you? That to me says he somehow, this is my opinion, some weird back and forth sex going on with him and Amanda, and maybe the roommate was being considered to be a part of it. Why would he have his hands on her bra clasp? Why?
That's yeah.
All right. So, and the thing is, when you say motive, these are spoiled kids who are sitting in a university in Italy having the time of their lives on basically what is an extended holiday, in my opinion, when you do this exchange student stuff. I'm not saying to everyone, because I went to school at Oxford for a summer and I studied hard, but we also played. Now, in those days, playing was me going to theaters in London and doing whatever. I was no angel, but it was different. You didn't have at least we didn't have access to the kind of drugs that there are today. I'm sure there was plenty of it. I was a drinker back then. I didn't care for drugs, but it wasn't that neither here nor there. You're telling me that these two kids who are entitled, spoiled kids, that they couldn't have just been bored, and that she couldn't have been trying to lure him back because he was on again, off again, sexy Italian boyfriend, and that somehow she figured out to play some sex game, and then that went bad, and then they panicked and tried to cover it up, and somehow got this guy, the drug dealer, involved with it because ATM money was taken out. And maybe they offered him money. Who knows?
Yeah, that's really crazy. But what they got this prosecutor, a lot of legal analysts say that he's very shady, he's over the top, and he was on a mission, i.e. Tom Stenton with Michael Jackson, to get, quote, her. What's your thought about that?
And I understand that, and I get that, and I understand that. We're at a place right now where in Italy she's guilty, in the USA she's innocent, and that this guy was on a mission. And there is this other side, KingJordan, and I do want to make note of it because it's a valid and important point. In Italy, their exchange students, their tourism is a huge part. American tourists, British tourists, is a huge part of their economy, one of the biggest. And so the last thing they want is for people to think that they can't send their children there or come there and from Britain or the United States or Australia or wherever and be safe and sound. So there was, I'm sure, a lot of pressure on this prosecutor to get this thing solved and to pin it on somebody within the college university community rather than say, oh, my God, we've got roaming maniacs that are coming in and killing people. Okay? So certainly there is that. However, if you really look at, again, the evidence, if it was in a U.S. court, would she be convicted? Well, I have to tell you, Alan Dershowitz recently spoke about this, defense attorney, Harvard law professor. He is one of the toughest nails leftist guys you ever want to know when it comes to this kind of stuff. I happen to know his son very well. And I'll tell you, to hear Alan Dershowitz say that there are many people in this country who have been convicted of murder on less evidence than there was in the Amanda Knox case says a whole lot in my book. Yeah. And he also mentioned, Jordan, that he would not want his son to be on a date with Amanda Knox. What does that tell you?
That tells me a lot. You know, tough prosecutor, tough defense attorney, tough-minded. Those statements are very tough. But what about this whole American people, you know, except Chris Cuomo? He got a lot of slack for the interview that he did with Amanda Knox, and compared to Diane Sawyer, where she was a little soft, and a lot of people felt that Chris went after her. Did you hear
again, remember how much money there is behind that book.
Yes,
you know, who knows what she was paid for that book? Who knows? You know, she's become this representation of an American darling who, you know, goes over to Europe and is persecuted by Europeans and is the fall girl for what is a crime that she had nothing to do with. Well, I'm sorry, but I just don't buy it. I don't. That's me. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and if the day comes that I'm completely wrong, I will, you know, eat crow, and I will get down on bended knee and beg for forgiveness from her, which I'll never get. But I'm telling you, I don't think that day will ever come, because I don't think that she can truly pull herself out of this. And to say that she was somehow goaded or brainwashed into what? Accusing somebody who was a totally innocent man instead? So she's going to, rather than say, I don't know, I didn't do it, she's going to throw the blame onto her boss that works at a bar?
Yeah, that wasn't really represented to a lot of people. That wasn't shown on TV. The picture that a lot of us got was this young, beautiful girl that was being falsely accused.
Yeah, well, what about when she falsely accused her boss, who had an airtight alibi, but she let the guy go to jail anyway? And what about the fact that she turned her cell phone off in the time, the cell phone was off in the relevant time period when all this was going down?
That's huge.
Gee, how convenient.
That's huge. That's very huge.
Okay, and her DNA is on the blood, is on the knife, and her DNA is and her footprints and her DNA is in the bathroom mixed in with the DNA of the victim in the bathroom, and she's walking around in the blood of the victim, and somebody's cleaned up that scene. That's not all done by one vagrant guy who's a drug dealer. I'm sorry. And he testified that she was there at his trial. That's why I say it was established. Now, of course, you could say, well, he was trying to save his own skin. Maybe so. But he's the only one who didn't know the victim. These other two knew the victim. Right, these other two had something going with this victim. Obviously. And you know what's
very interesting, Aphrodite? The parents of the deceased still believe that it's Amanda.
Well,
they have not changed their situation.
Yeah. Well, what does that tell you?
Yeah,
you know, I mean the thing is, look, here's another thing that I want to say that I think is important. If this was Casey Anthony and she was being tried in Italy, she would have gone to prison. If this was George Zimmerman and he was tried in Italy, he would have gone to prison. So when people want to argue about how the Italians are corrupt and this and that and da-da-da-da, and the system is different and all this other garbage, you know what? I'm tired of the American system letting people walk away in the name of making sure that there's no doubt, because reasonable is no longer reasonable. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's become beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that's not the standard by which our founding forefathers set for our American system of justice.
Right. They always say use your common sense.
And common sense has somehow gone out a lot of windows. And by the way, there's plenty of corrupt prosecutors all around the world. Okay, and they have their agendas, and they have their political agendas, and they have pressure put on them to win cases and do this, and they make their mistakes, and there's shoddy police work. But at the end of the day, if you truly believe and you know what you got, okay, even if you are a bit of a scoundrel, that doesn't change the fact that somebody's a murderer.
No, I totally agree with you. And